The Karath Empire was one of the most feared forces in the galaxy. Massive warships, advanced weapons, and an unbreakable will made them unstoppable. Their fleet could crush any enemy without mercy. They had destroyed countless civilizations, and they thought they had seen it all. But that was before they saw the tiny fleet of human ships dot a T first. The Karath dismissed the human fleet as a joke. A few tiny ships appeared on their radar, just specks in the vastness of space. No threat, they thought. The Karath commanders laughed and sent a small squadron of their own ships to deal with the so-called tiny fleet. They were sure it would be an easy victory. But as the human fleet moved closer, something strange began to happen. The small ships didn't seem afraid. They didn't turn away, and they didn't retreat. Instead, they moved with purpose, their engines humming in perfect sync. The Karath squadron opened fire, but the tiny fleet danced around their weapons with uncanny precision, avoiding every blast. The Karath ships were confused. They had never seen such skill. "Fire again," ordered General Varnak, the Karath leader. His patience was running thin. Another round of blasts lit up space, but the tiny human ships continued to evade. Suddenly, one of the Karath ships was hit. It wasn't a direct strike, but the blast caused a ripple effect, and sparks flew from the ship's control panel. The ship started to drift off course, helpless against the forces attacking it. The Karath commanders grew alarmed. "What just happened?" General Varnak barked. "We don't know, sir," his officer replied. "The human ships, they aren't just avoiding our fire. They're disabling our systems." The Karath were not used to such things. No one had ever challenged them like this, especially not humans. They had always believed humans were weak, stuck on a dying planet, too primitive to even consider as a real threat. But now, they were starting to realize how wrong they were. Asa, the battle continued. The tiny fleet of humans unleashed something no one expected, a new kind of weapon. It wasn't something they had seen before, not in their wildest dreams. The human ships launched a series of small projectiles, nothing too big, nothing that should have been dangerous. But when the projectiles hit their targets, something changed. The Karath ships began to malfunction, their shields flickering, their weapons failing. It wasn't just an attack, it was an infection. The projectiles released a virus that spread through the Karath systems, turning their own technology against them. The Karath tried to fight back, but it was too late. Each passing moment saw more and more of their ships fall apart. Their weapon systems failed. Their communication lines were cut. Panic spread across their ranks as they realized that the tiny fleet wasn't just firing at them. They were hacking into their very ships. General Varnak's face grew pale. His hand gripped the command console, his knuckles white. "All ships, retreat," he ordered. But it was no use. The damage was already done. His own fleet was falling apart around him. Meanwhile, the humans kept moving forward. They didn't seem in a hurry. There was no panic, no rush. They knew exactly what they were doing. The tiny fleet had a mission, and they were seeing it through. The Karath tried everything they could think of, firing their strongest weapons, sending in reinforcements, even attempting to retreat. But the human fleet was relentless. Every time they thought they had an opening, another trick was played. More of their ships fell. More of their technology was turned against them. The human ships were small, but they were deadly. They didn't need size to win. They had something far more powerful: intelligence. They used their small ships to their advantage, attacking in unexpected ways and using tactics the Karath had never considered. And the humans knew something the Karath didn't. Their technology was not as invincible as they believed. The Karath thought they were the masters of war, but the humans had evolved. They had learned, adapted, and developed new weapons and strategies that the Karath couldn't even begin to comprehend. Back on the Karath flagship, General Varnak stood at the command center, watching as his empire crumbled. His people, who had once ruled the galaxy with fear, were now at the mercy of a tiny human fleet. It was humiliating. It was terrifying. One by one, the Karath ships were taken down. The human fleet didn't show any signs of slowing down. They had a job to do, and they were finishing it. Finally, General Varnak turned to his officers. We underestimated them. We believed humans were weak, easy to crush. But we were wrong. We made a fatal mistake." His voice was filled with anger and regret. But it was too late for regret. The tiny fleet had already won. The Karath were defeated, and their once proud empire lay in ruins. The human ships, with their deadly secret, had brought an end to their reign. As the last of the Karath warships was disabled, the tiny fleet of humans didn't celebrate. They didn't cheer. They simply turned their ships around and left. Their mission was complete. They had proven the Karath wrong, and they had shown the galaxy that humans were not to be underestimated. The tiny fleet may have seemed insignificant at first, but they had done something no one thought possible. They had taken down the mighty Karath Empire, and they had done it in a way that would be remembered forever. And as the human ships disappeared into the vastness of space, one thing was clear: humanity was not just a speck in the galaxy. They were a force to be reckoned with. The Xenox Empire was one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy. They had conquered hundreds of planets, and their warships were the largest and most feared in space. No one dared challenge them, and their rule seemed unshakable. But that was before humanity struck back. It all started when the Xenox arrived in Earth's system, prepared to wipe out the last remnants of human civilization. They believed the humans were weak, primitive, and barely capable of surviving in the harshness of space. The Xenox had crushed many lesser species before, and they thought Earth would be no different. But they underestimated one thing: the spirit of humanity. The Xenox sent a massive fleet toward Earth, intending to erase all human life. Their warships were sleek, enormous, and armed with weapons powerful enough to obliterate entire cities with a single strike. When they arrived at Earth's orbit, they fired the first shot, a powerful beam that tore through the planet's defenses like paper. They thought it was over. The humans had no chance against their advanced technology. But they didn't count on one thing: the humans were not done fighting. On the surface of Earth, the leaders of humanity had gathered in secret. They had seen the Xenox fleet approaching and knew the end was near. But they also knew something the Xenox did not. Over the years, humans had been developing new technology, weapons hidden in the shadows, designed specifically to fight invaders like the Xenox. These weapons weren't massive like the Xenox ships. They were small, efficient, and deadly. As the Xenox ships circled the planet, the humans made their move. A fleet of small, agile ships shot up from Earth's surface, leaving behind a trail of smoke and fire. The Xenox commanders looked at their screens, surprised. A fleet of humans? They had thought all human ships were outdated and easy to destroy. But these were different. The tiny fleet of human ships began to move quickly, dodging Xenox fire with expert precision. They didn't fight like the Xenox did. The humans were faster, more unpredictable. They didn't stay in one place long enough to be targeted. Instead of charging head-on like most armies, they struck from unexpected angles, using their small size and speed to their advantage. The Xenox were confused. Their massive warships, meant to dominate entire fleets, were struggling to hit the humans. Every time they locked on, the tiny ships disappeared, only to reappear somewhere else, taking out small groups of Xenox fighters. One by one, the Xenox ships were destroyed. Where are they getting this technology? General Kreth, leader of the Xenox fleet, shouted in frustration. He couldn't understand how the humans were managing to evade every attack. Their ships were small, but they seemed to have the perfect counter to everything the Xenox threw at them. The Xenox commanders tried to regroup, but the humans weren't giving them a chance. The tiny ships attacked again, this time targeting the Xenox weak points. Their powerful weapon systems were now useless against the humans' new tactics. The Xenox ships, designed to be nearly invincible, were beginning to break apart under the precision of the human assault. The human ships were not as large, but they were built with one goal in mind: to fight back against the overwhelming power of the Xenox. Hidden inside the ships were weapons designed for exactly this moment: advanced EMP devices capable of disabling the Xenox communication systems, cloaking technology that made the human fleet nearly invisible, and small, powerful weapons that could pierce even the test armor. Each attack left the Xenox more and more disoriented. Their once proud fleet, the symbol of their power, was falling apart. The Xenocs tried to call for reinforcements, but the humans had already disabled their communication channels. The Xenocs commanders were trapped in their own ships, unable to coordinate with one another. As the Xenocs fleet began to crumble, General Kreith called for an emergency retreat. "Get us out of here." "Now!" he yelled. But it was too late. The humans had already launched another wave of attacks, targeting the Xenocs flagship. This time, the human ships didn't just disable the Xenoc ship, they destroyed it. With a deafening explosion, the flagship was gone, and the Xenocs fleet was in chaos. The humans' fleet moved quickly, taking out the remaining Xenoc ships one by one. The Xenocs, who had once believed themselves invincible, were now running for their lives. Back on Earth, humanity watched as the last of the Xenoc ships disappeared into the darkness of space. The tiny fleet had done it. They had fought back against an empire that was believed to be unstoppable. And they had won. The humans didn't celebrate. They didn't need to. They knew that this battle was just the beginning. The Xenocs were not the only threat in the galaxy, but they had sent a message that would echo across the stars. Humanity was no longer a weak, insignificant species. They were fighters. They had the will to survive, and they had the technology to strike back. The tiny fleet, once thought to be powerless, had proven that size didn't matter. It wasn't about the number of ships or the strength of the weapons. It was about strategy, courage, and the will to fight for survival. The Xenocs had learned that lesson the hard way. As the humans prepared for whatever came next, they knew one thing for sure: the galaxy had underestimated them. And now, they would never be ignored again. The Xantha Collective ruled over many galaxies, their immense power and vast warships leaving no room for doubt. For centuries, their domination had been uncontested, their war machines feared and unmatched. Their strategy was simple: crush all who opposed them with overwhelming force. They never expected anyone to challenge them until the fleet appeared. It started when a small group of scouts detected unusual readings near the edge of Xantha space. The ships were nothing special, just a few tiny specks in the vast darkness of space. At first, the Xantha dismissed it. "Just some unimportant ships," the commander, Voker, said with a dismissive wave. They were used to scanning for serious threats. But this was nothing. The fleet was human. The Xanthi, with their towering warships and advanced weaponry, had encountered many species in their time. And every time, they'd been victorious. The idea of a small, insignificant human fleet posing a threat was laughable. After all, humans had barely managed to get off their planet, and their technology was primitive compared to the Xanthis. Why would they even bother? But as the tiny fleet moved closer to Xantha space, something strange happened. The usual patterns of movement weren't there. The ships didn't act like regular fleets. They were unpredictable, fast, and kept changing directions. There were no patterns, no obvious strategy. The Xanthi couldn't understand it. Then, the first surprise hit. The human ships didn't open fire from a distance like the Xanthi expected. They didn't charge in, screaming for battle. No, instead, the human fleet started to move quietly. They split up, each ship going in a different direction. The Xanthi's sensors couldn't keep up, and their ships began to lose track of the humans. "It's just a trick," Voker muttered, trying to shake off the unease creeping up his spine. "They're trying to confuse us." But the humans weren't just confusing the Xanthi. They were setting a trap. Without warning, the human ships fired. It wasn't a massive barrage of shots. No, it was far more precise. The tiny fleet aimed at weak spots in the Xantha warships, targeting power sources and communication systems. The first Xanthi ship, a massive dreadnought. It didn't make sense. How could these tiny ships, so much smaller and weaker, inflict such damage? Before the Xanthi could react, another ship was hit, and then another. The human fleet was everywhere, moving fast, staying hidden and attacking with deadly accuracy. The Xanthi couldn't lock onto them, couldn't figure out where the next strike would come from. The humans were in and out in the blink of an eye, leaving chaos in their wake. Vokar's heart raced. This wasn't supposed to happen. The Xanthi were supposed to be unstoppable, not caught off guard by a handful of tiny ships. They had no idea how the humans were doing it. The Xantha warships were bigger, more powerful, yet the humans were attacking in ways that made no sense. There was no strategy the Xanthi could predict, no way to outmaneuver them. The Xantha fleet began to fall apart. Suddenly, one of the smaller human ships appeared in front of Voker's flagship. It was so close that he could almost reach out and touch it. The human ship wasn't firing its weapons. Instead, it released something strange, a pulse of energy that hit the flagship's systems. For a moment, everything went dark. The lights flickered, and the communication systems went down. The Xantha flagship was paralyzed. "Get it off us!" Voker screamed, but his orders were useless. His ship was stuck, helpless against the humans' attack. The tiny human ship shot off again, disappearing into the void as if it had never been there. "Retreat!" Voker finally commanded. "We cannot win this." But it was too late. The humans weren't done yet. As the Xantha fleet tried to regroup, another wave of attacks hit. This time, the humans were targeting the Xanthi's main defense stations. Each one fell in rapid succession, until the once invincible fleet was nothing but a shadow of its former self. Voker stood frozen on the bridge of his flagship, his hands gripping the command console. He couldn't believe what was happening. His fleet, the pride of the Yadsa Collective, was being destroyed by a few tiny ships. How could they have been so wrong about humans? They never stood a chance," Voker said quietly, his voice filled with disbelief. "We underestimated them." As the last of the Xanthi ships fell, the tiny fleet of humans withdrew, silently disappearing into the depths of space. The Xanthi had been defeated. The human fleet, which had once seemed so small and insignificant, had taken down the greatest empire in the galaxy. Back in the heart of the Xantha fleet, Voker's thoughts raced. They had thought they could crush the humans easily. Instead, the tiny fleet had turned the tables, using cunning tactics and technology the Xanthi had never imagined. The humans hadn't just attacked with weapons, they had attacked with their minds. The humans had shown the galaxy that size didn't matter. Strategy, speed, and intelligence could win the fight. And the Xanthi had learned that the hard way. Word spread quickly through the galaxy about the human victory. No one would underestimate them again. The tiny fleet they had never seen coming had changed the course of history. The humans had struck back, and the galaxy would never forget it. The Vrex Empire had once ruled the stars with an iron fist. Their warships were colossal, their technology far beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen, and their armies were unstoppable. They believed themselves to be invincible, and they had crushed every species that had dared to challenge them. For centuries, the galaxy had trembled in fear of the Vrex. Then, the humans arrived at T first. The Vrex barely noticed Earth. The humans were nothing more than a primitive species, barely out of their caves and struggling to survive. The Vrex thought them weak, too weak to stand against the might of their empire. But they had made one crucial mistake. They underestimated humanity. It started with small skirmishes, human ships appearing at the edges of Vrex-controlled space, probing, testing, never engaging in full-scale conflict. The Vrex commanders laughed it off. "These humans have no idea what they're doing," they scoffed. "We are the masters of the galaxy." But as the Vrex pushed deeper into human space, they found something they hadn't expected. The humans didn't run. They didn't panic. They fought back. The first blow came unexpectedly. A Vrex destroyer, cruising through the outer rim, suddenly exploded into flames. The crew had no idea what hit them. The blast had come from nowhere, just a single, powerful shot that pierced through their shields. When the Vrex sent scouts to investigate, they found nothing. No enemy ships, no signs of combat. Just an empty void and a destroyed ship. The Vrex were baffled. "That shouldn't have been possible," said Commander Zev, a high-ranking officer in the Vrex fleet. He could not understand it. The humans didn't have the technology to strike like this. How could one shot have taken down a Vrex warship? As more Vrex ships were attacked in the same mysterious way, the situation grew more urgent. The Vrex decided to respond with overwhelming force. They would crush the humans once and for all. They sent their largest fleet, an armada of hundreds of ships, to Earth's solar system. The humans were ready. When the Vrex fleet arrived, they expected to find an easy victory. But instead, they encountered a trap. The human fleet, small compared to the vast armada of the Vrex, was waiting. At first, the Vrex laughed at the sight of the small human ships. There were only a few dozen of them. How could these ships possibly pose any threat? But as the Vrex fleet advanced, they found themselves under attack. Suddenly, their weapon systems were malfunctioning. Their ship's engines faltered, their communications were jammed, and their shields started to flicker. The Vrex commanders tried to regain control, but it was too late. Human ships, small but fast, darted in and out of the Vrex fleet, firing precise shots that disabled key systems. "What's happening?" Commander Zev screamed. "Why can't we target them?" It was simple. The humans had developed a weapon the Vrex had never seen before, a sophisticated EMP pulse that could disable even the most advanced systems. But that was just the beginning. As the Vrex ship's struggled to regain control, the human fleet launched another wave of attacks, this time focusing on the Vrex flagship. The Vrex flagship was the heart of their empire, the symbol of their power. Its destruction would be devastating. The humans knew this. Using their small ships as decoys, they drew the Vrex flagship into a trap. The flagship's weapons fired wildly, but the humans had already anticipated every move. With pinpoint accuracy, they disabled the flagship's weapons, sending shockwaves through the Vrex fleet. "What is this?" General Knox, the Vrex commander aboard the flagship, shouted in disbelief. "Who are these humans?" As the flagship systems failed, the humans moved in for the kill. They fired one last powerful shot, and the flagship exploded in a massive fireball. The Vrex fleet was in chaos. For the first time in centuries, the Vrex Empire was in retreat. The human ships didn't stop. They continued their assault, taking down ship after ship with relentless precision. The Vrex tried to regroup, but their once mighty fleet was crumbling. The humans were everywhere, and they had no intention of letting the Vrex escape. As the last of the Vrex ships fell, Commander Zev stood on the bridge of his remaining vessel, staring in disbelief. His empire had fallen apart in a matter of hours, destroyed by the humans. The same humans they had laughed at. The same humans they had thought would be an easy victory. The humans. "They're not weak," Zev muttered under his breath. "They've been hiding something all along." The Vrex were no longer laughing. They had been defeated. And as the last human ship disappeared into the distance, the galaxy knew that things had changed. The humans had taken down the mightiest empire in the galaxy, and they had done it in a way no one had ever expected. The Vrex had been so certain of their power, so sure of their victory. They had underestimated the humans, and now they were paying the price. Back on Earth, the humans did not celebrate. They did not cheer. They had fought not for glory, but for survival. They had fought because they had no other choice. And in the end, they had won. But they knew this victory was just the beginning. The galaxy would never forget the humans' last laugh, the laugh of a species that had been written off, only to rise up and conquer the impossible. And the Vrex? They would never make the same mistake again. The Androsian Empire had stretched across the stars for over 1,000 years, an unstoppable force with its colossal warships and advanced weaponry. No one dared challenge them, not the Orcs, not the Zorians, and certainly not the humans. To the Androsians, the humans were nothing more than a curiosity, a primitive species barely capable of space travel. They were wrong. It all started when a small fleet of human ships entered the Androsian-controlled sector of the galaxy. The Androsian fleet, a massive armada of warships, was on high alert, prepared to deal with any threat. But when the humans arrived, they were shocked by what they saw. The human fleet was tiny, barely a dozen ships, each one smaller than the Androsian warships. "They're nothing," Commander Kyle said, with a laugh as he looked at the human fleet from his flagship. "Let's show them how real warriors fight." The Androsians had always relied on brute force to crush their enemies. Their ships were larger, their weapons more powerful, and their shields practically impenetrable. The humans had no chance, or so they thought. The human ships didn't immediately open fire. They didn't even make any aggressive moves. They simply hovered, almost as if they were waiting. The Androsians were puzzled. Were the humans afraid? Were they trying to surrender? Wait for their next move, Kale ordered. They won't last long. The Androsians waited, confident that the humans would either flee or surrender. But instead, they saw something they hadn't expected. The human ships began to move in a way that didn't make sense. They darted in and out, taking strange, unpredictable paths. It was as though they were playing some kind of game, and the Androsians were the targets. Kale scoffed. What are they doing? These humans are fools. They can't even land a single shot. He was wrong. Without warning, the human ships fired. The shots were precise, not random like the Androsians expected. One by one, they struck key points on the Androsian warship's engines, weapon systems, and shield generators. The Androsian flagship, the pride of the Empire, took a direct hit to its main engine, causing it to stall. Another hit disabled its primary weapons, rendering the mighty ship useless. What's happening? Kyle demanded, gripping the command chair. Why are their weapons so effective? The human fleet didn't stop. They'd already planned their attack with military precision. As the Androsian ships scrambled to regain control, the humans moved in quickly, disabling more and more ships with each pass. They didn't fight head-on like the Androsians were used to. They fought like shadows, always elusive, always unpredictable. Every time the Androsians thought they had the humans cornered, they were gone in an instant, only to appear somewhere else, attacking again. We need to regroup, Kyle ordered, panic creeping into his voice. Send reinforcements from the nearby sector. But it was too late. The Androsians were not used to this kind of battle. Their fleets had always been larger, more powerful, and they had never been forced to adapt to a smaller, faster enemy. The human ships worked together with an almost unnatural synchronicity, picking apart the Androsian forces with ease. Why aren't they fighting like the others? General Zora, one of Kyle's trusted commanders, asked in disbelief. They're using tactics we've never seen. We've underestimated them, Kyle muttered, his confidence shattering. The humans are smarter than we thought. As the battle raged on, it became clear that the Androsians had made a fatal mistake. Their arrogance had blinded them to the reality of the humans' capabilities. They had assumed that just because the humans were small, they were weak. But the humans were anything but weak. They were relentless, clever, and resourceful, everything the Androsians had never imagined. One by one, the Androsian warships fell. A few exploded in fiery showers of debris, while others were left drifting, their systems down and their crews unable to repair the damage. The pride of the Empire, once thought invincible, was now just another wreck in the vastness of space. We can't win this, Kale whispered, his voice hollow with disbelief. They've broken our fleet. General Zora looked at the humans, their ships dancing around the Androsian fleet, causing chaos with every move. We need to surrender, she said. If we don't, we'll lose everything. The Androsians had never known defeat like this. For the first time in their long history, their enemies were winning. The humans had proven that strength alone wasn't enough to guarantee victory. In the end, it was intelligence, strategy, and the ability to adapt that had won the battle. As the last of the Androsian ships fell, Commander Kale's heart sank. His empire, which had been invincible for centuries, was now in ruins. The humans had outsmarted them, outmaneuvered them, and defeated them with tactics the Androsians had never imagined. The humans had the last laugh, and as the survivors of the Androsian fleet fled into deep space, their minds raced with one question: how had they been so blind? How had they missed the danger posed by the humans? They had underestimated their enemies, and it had cost them everything.